Hi guys, James at Rampant Lion Reviews again for you today with another beer review. For this one we are going to stick to Sweden and we're going to return to a brewery that has featured on the channel a couple of times before. These guys are a relatively new addition to the Swedish beer scene and they seem to be specialising in Belgian beers, which is very nice because there's not too many breweries in Sweden doing that at the moment. The other two beers I've had from this brewery have been of the more kind of dark and malty variety, whereas this time we are going to go to the lighter end of the spectrum. And this is one of my favourite styles of Belgian traditional beer. So really curious to see how it turns out. Fingers crossed it's as good as the other ones we've had before. Fingers crossed this one doesn't explode as well like the last one did. And I hope that you guys enjoy my take on this beer as well. So yeah, for this review then, we are going to go to a little place called Ljungsbro, just to the north of Linköping, and we're going to have a look at my third beer from Vreta Kloster Nanobryggeri, or the Vreta Monastery Nanobryggeri if you want to translate it into English. This beer is simply called Trippel. Comes in at 9.2% ABV, and I think you know what style this one is. But this beer was released as part of the Lokal Småskaligt assortment through Systembolaget here in Sweden for April of 2021. And yeah, like I say, beer number 3 from these guys. The last ones that we had, the first one was just a very dark Belgian strong ale. I think it was called the Abdician 12, and I forget what the one after that was called. Was it called St. Helena or something like that, if I remember rightly? And that was a quadruple, and unfortunately that one exploded. I only got about 50 millilitres of the beer out of the bottle, but you know, I guess that can happen sometimes with Belgian style beers, but fingers crossed we don't get that again. Both of them though were very nice beers, very authentic, so I'm hoping that this one carries on in the same vein. As I've told you in previous reviews, my favourite styles of Belgian beer would probably be the Flanders Red, the Belgian Blonde, the triple and the quadruple as well. So yeah, definitely nice to have a Swedish triple on the channel for you. Again, I've had a couple of Swedish triples over the last little while. I think Östergötaland Ölkultur, Alien Brewery, and a couple of others over the years too. So nice to have one from a kind of Swedish style, or Swedish Belgian style brewery, I guess we could say. So yeah, let's crack on with this one then. So as always with my reviews, I'll tell you a little bit about the brewery before we taste the beer. If you want to get straight to the tasting, just fast forward. All the usual links are in the video description below. That's the brewery website, the link to my other reviews that I've done from Vreta Kloster Nanobryggeri before, and we will no doubt add more to that list in the fairly near future. But there's all the usual social media down there. If you want to see more reviews, do please consider subscribing to the channel. The whole channel, of course, has a geography-based tagging system, so you can go into the homepage and search for beer based on country, city, state, county, province, prefecture, whatever it is you happen to be interested in. Do check out the playlists of beers from different countries. There is one there for all the Swedish beers that I've reviewed for you. That's constantly being added to, and as always, please do get in touch and let me know some of the other beers and breweries that you guys would like to see me review. It's always great to hear from you guys that are watching the videos, and the support that you show the channel is hugely appreciated. So anyway, to tell you a little bit about the brewery, and we'll also talk about the monastery in this video as well because it's quite interesting. But yeah, as I've mentioned to you already, the brewery is based in Ljungsbro, which is just to the north of Linköping, and the brewery takes its name from the nearby Vreta Kloster, or Vreta Monastery as you would say in English, which is Sweden's oldest nunnery, having operated between the 12th and 16th century. So the monastery was founded by King Inge the Elder and Queen Helena sometime around the year 1100, and it's believed that there was a brewery in the convent at one stage. But the convent was Benedictine until 1162, and then it changed to become Cistercian, and over the centuries several kings were buried in the church, and after the Reformation it was forbidden for them to take on any new novices, and so the place sort of transformed into a school for the daughters of the nobility, as well as being a retirement home for, well, a retirement place if you like, for noble women. But the last nun died in 1582, and these days the Vreta Abbey is actually part of the Church of Sweden, and it still operates as a kind of regular Protestant church, I guess we could say. But the brewery itself, the Vreta Kloster Brewery, was founded in October of 2019 by Andreas Fejes. He'd been a home brewer for a while, and he had a considerable interest in Belgian beers, but outside of brewing he's a researcher in adult education, and he has his own consultancy company on that subject as well. But Andreas started off with a brewery of 200 litres and a number of different tanks, and he hopes to basically scale up the brewery over the coming years if he proves to be successful with his brewing. But the beers that I've tried so far have been really nice and authentic. I think they've been available a little bit longer than I've actually been able to get a hold of them in Systembolaget. I can't remember when the first beer I got from these guys. It must have been about November of 2020 or something like that. I think it was a good couple of months ago, but I think these beers have been available in the local area for quite a little bit of time before that. But regardless, as of April 2021, when I'm filming this review for you, they've produced 12 different kinds of beer according to Untappd, and I'm sure we'll review a few more of these over the next little while. But yeah, like I said, this brewery are specialising in Belgian beer, and I guess you could probably say they are fairly influenced by the Trappist breweries down in Belgium and the Netherlands too. But yeah, that's all I can really tell you about the brewery for the moment, and for the monastery as well. If you want to learn more, I'll put the websites in the description for you below. You can follow them on Facebook and Instagram to keep up to date with all the latest goings on, and you can of course check out the Rate Beer, Untappd and Beer Advocate pages to learn more about all the different beers that these guys have done. So yeah, let's crack on with this review then. Very curious to see what a beer at the lighter end of the spectrum turns out as. But yeah, as you can see, some very nice artwork on there, which you always get. You do get this old style kind of painting thing with the nuns enjoying some beer. But yeah, you can also see that's on the bottle cap in this one as well. But yeah, it tells you a little bit about the Vreta Kloster on the side there, but we've already gone through that in the video. But it says, Vreta Kloster Trippel is something full, is somewhat of a fruitier and fuller version of a Belgian triple, and it finishes with a certain bitterness. So yeah, it's interesting. And it talks about, yeah, secondary fermentation, and it says served between 8 to 10 degrees, and I've kept it out of the fridge for maybe about 20 minutes, half an hour or so, so I think the fridge was about 3-4 degrees, so it probably will be about the right temperature now, I would think. So yeah, 330ml bottle. I think I paid about 35 or 40 Swedish kroners for this one, which is pretty good actually. So that translates roughly to about €3.50, £3, just a little bit over £3 sterling, and maybe about $4.25, $4.50 for the bottle, which for a 9.2% triple is pretty decent, I would say. So yeah, let's get this guy out then, and we'll get on with the tasting. Very curious, I have to say. Let's see, it behaves itself. Yes, there we go. Happy with that. Happy with that. Just a little bit wanting to escape, but you know, with secondary fermentation, you're always going to get that. But yeah, with these Belgian beers, Belgian style beers, always be careful with them when you're pouring them. Don't pour them too aggressively, because then you're just going to end up with a mountain of foam. You want a bit of head on these, but you know, you don't want it to go absolutely crazy. So yeah, as I've told you in previous reviews, when it comes to the Belgian style beers, particularly the triples and the quadruples, I think they also do it with the doubles as well to an extent. Quite often what they do with them is they put a little bit of brewing sugar into them, so that's why you get such a high alcohol content to these beers, and why you also get like still quite a light mouthfeel compared to a number of other different styles. So they put, in some of them, they put like rock candy and things like that in them, which is pretty interesting. So yeah, that's why you always get a slightly lighter mouthfeel from Belgian beers. But Belgian beer is of course all about the yeast rather than the hops and the malt, although obviously they do play a considerable role. But yeah, this one looks really nice. Before the head disappears, there is about a half finger of a frothy, I would say kind of creamy, very light beige coloured head. You can see one or two more yellow bits sitting on the top of it, because it's got, you know, from the yeasty sediment and things, and the other didn't look as if there was too much sediment at the bottom of it. But yeah, nice head that. That's going to fade away quite soon to just be a very thin foamy layer and leave a nice big foamy ring around the edge of the glass. But I mean, overall it looks pretty damn nice, I have to say. So yeah, I have to say this is definitely one of the darker triples that I've come across over the last little while. Actually, you can see there are little bits and bobs of sediment just floating around as suspension in the liquid there, but you're always going to get that with this style of beer. But yeah, one or two big bubbles sticking towards the side of the glass, a few little ones going up towards the bottom of the head there. But I mean, in terms of a triple, like I say, one of the darker ones that I've come across, but there's nothing madly out of the ordinary about this beer in terms of its appearance. As you can see, it's got a lovely, very rich amber colour to it. And remember, when it comes to the colour of your beer, it's determined by a couple of things. One, the type of malts that you use. Two, the length of your wort boil. The longer you boil the wort, the more the sugars caramelise, thus you get a darker colour of beer. And the adjuncts in barrel aging can also play a role. So maybe the darkness of this one could be due to the type of sugar that they've put in this one, the type of brewing sugar. That can always play a role in it. But yeah, maybe it's just got a little bit of caramel or something in it, and that's made it a wee bit darker. But yeah, certainly looks the part. Let's take a closer look at the aroma then and just see how we get on with this one then. Very curious. That does smell quite nice. It smells pretty strong actually as well. Although, you know, 9.2%, I think, you know, usually a triple is between like, you know, 8.5 and 9.5%. So nothing, yeah, again, it's not out of the ordinary there. But yeah, this aroma comes across very, very nicely. A lot of brown sugar in this one, I think, but you've also got that nice big kind of doughy, yeasty backbone to it. So yeah, let's see how we can break that aroma down for you then. So straight away with this beer, the backbone is that big, doughy, kind of yeasty sort of thing. Of course, you're getting a little bit of banana in it as well, which is great. You're getting a little bit of a kind of clovey spice also, which I think works really nicely. But yeah, the aroma out of this beer, I think, works very, very well. So yeah, it's actually quite sweet. The thing that's interesting about this one is that the yeast in this beer comes across as really quite sweet. So yeah, you've got that doughy, bready sort of base to it, you've got the clovey spice in there, but you've got a nice big sweet banana also. So all of that is mixed in the base layer of the beer. There's one or two sort of slightly woody elements to it as well, which I think is quite interesting. But yeah, it's definitely got a really nice base to it, I have to say. It's the strength of that kind of banana-y flavour out of the bit, banana-y aroma out of this one that's interesting. There is a wee touch of a bubblegummy element to it, but not a lot. That's the thing that gets me about this one, is that it really leans towards that slightly sweeter, candied banana sort of thing. So yeah, interesting. Definitely different from what I've had from the Belgian beers, for sure. But yeah, there's quite a bit of brown sugar out of this one, I would say, and that would go some way to explaining the colour of this one. But yeah, I do get a little bit of a kind of brown sugary element out of it, but it doesn't come across as being like a big oily caramel or anything like that. It comes across actually as being a little bit more biscuity. So in the middle of the nose you get a kind of concentrated biscuity note, and as you move further out from it, it's got a little bit more of a kind of McVitie's digestive sort of thing. So yeah, I like how it goes together for sure. So yeah, this beer is dominated by that big sort of banana bready sort of backbone that it has, and I can certainly appreciate that about this beer for sure. But yeah, concentrated McVitie's digestive biscuity sort of thing in the middle of the nose there, and then it gets a little bit more sort of grainy, if you like, as you go, a little bit more kind of grainy and biscuity as you go further out towards the edge. But yeah, I like how this one goes together. Definitely, it is a very, very nice smelling beer, I have to say. So yeah, I think we can leave it at that for the malty and yeasty side of things. On the hoppy side of the beer, I think it is kind of what you'd expect. So there's a little touch of an earthiness out of this one, which you're always going to get. A good little bit of herbal quality as well, and some nice bright floral aromatic notes, and a little bit of a kind of grassy element as well. The grassiness does have a wee touch of zest to it, but with these Belgian beers, they often use the likes of German Hallertau or Tettnanger, or a little bit of Czech Sats. Styrian Goldings from Slovenia is also a candidate as well. They use these sort of hops in these beers. Of course, there are Belgian varieties too, from what I understand. But yeah, it's, you know, they tend to use low alpha acid hops in these beers so that the bitterness doesn't take away from the kind of more yeasty aspects of the beer. But yeah, the green component in this one is quite nice. The more you smell of it, the more you get a little touch of the grassy zestiness as well. But yeah, goes together nicely in that sense too. The fruity side of the beer is pretty much what you'd expect. As we said, you've got a banana element from the yeasty side of things. You've got a good bit of apricot in there as well. You know, I don't know if you could say there's a bit of pie in this, but you've got quite a little bit of an apple-y kind of peary ester, maybe even a wee touch of gooseberry. You know, you're getting these kind of lighter sort of fruity elements. But yeah, apricot, yeah, definitely a good little bit of apricot, a little bit of yeah, a little bit of apricot, a little bit of yeah, a little bit of apricot, a little bit of a kind of sort of peary ester, a little bit of gooseberry I think as well, and just a wee touch of an appley note too. So yeah, let's see how we get on with this one then. So aroma's very nice, kind of what you'd expect, but let's crack into this and see what we've got. So this beer is the Trippel, 9.2% Belgian style Trippel from Vreta Kloster Nanobryggeri in Ljungsbro, close to Linköping here in Sweden. As I always say, take a bit of time to ponder over the aroma, but now it's time to try this beer. Slange, skål, cheers. Yeah, that's pretty damn solid. I mean, we've said this about the other beers we've had from these guys. They are all solid examples of the Belgian style of brew. The thing you always get with Scandinavian brewed beers, and it's always the further north you go as well, they always just feel like really, really clean. So any Swedish, Norwegian, I guess Finnish as well, and Danish, you know, the Scandinavian and the Nordic countries, you know, if you get beers, Belgian style beers from these breweries, if you like, you will always just get very clean examples of them, whereas the Belgian ones are a little bit more kind of raw, and you can just feel the yeastiness is a bit more kind of raw in a sense, whereas these ones just come across as really clean. But I like both. I do like both, I have to say. But I'm just going to say straight away to Vreta Kloster, this is another solid example of a Belgian style beer. It is a very malty leaning Trippel, this one, I would definitely say that, but there's nothing wrong with that. There is nothing wrong with that. You know, these beers will vary from brewery to brewery. But yeah, it definitely, this beer mellows out a little bit the more that you drink of it. But yeah, I get quite a bit of malt out of this one for sure. So yeah, I think they've got a really nice balance in this between the yeasty, malty and kind of adjuncty sugar side of things. So yeah, I certainly wouldn't hesitate to drink this again, but though, as we always say, the Trippel is a sort of treat beer, this one. You're not going to drink a ton of these, to be honest. But yeah, I like it, so thumbs up. Let's try and break down the flavour for you a bit then and just see how we get on. So, as you would expect from this style of beer, we'll start in the middle third of the palate as we always do. The backbone of this beer is that doughy, yeasty element thing. So you get that going right across the middle of your palate there. As I was kind of inferring earlier on, it's a very smooth and just not quite as raw yeasty element that you get out of this, but I like that about it. I do like the kind of cleanliness that this beer has. So yeah, the backbone of the beer in that middle third of your palate is that big doughy, yeasty, bready sort of thing. The further you go into the aftertaste, you're going to get some of the clovey elements coming out of it, and then in the very centre of that middle third of your palate, that's where you're getting the kind of sweeter banana elements out of this one. You know, you could argue that there's a little bit of a, say, banana, you know, a little bit of a kind of bubblegummy kind of thing coming out of the beer, but I mean, it's I don't find this one as bubblegummy as some of the ones that I've had before, but it's certainly very typical. I mean, what I look for when I try the Belgian beers and the German beers brewed in other countries, I look for authenticity, and this beer has that. But as I say, it's a little bit more of a malty take on the style, but there's nothing wrong with that. These beers vary from brewery to brewery, but it's got the authenticity there. But definitely not as candied as some of the ones that I've kind of come across. But I like this approach. I'm always, you know, you guys have watched the channel for a long enough time, you know that I'm a little bit of a malt head, so I like the approach that this beer takes. But yeah, I think that covers the base, the backbone of the beer. If you go to the front corners of your palate, then go diagonally back, you will of course get one or two little woody elements coming out of this one, but that doesn't take away from the kind of bready base of the beer, the clove, the bananas, the little bit of bubblegummy stuff, and then yeah, that doesn't really take away from that at all. It's more like a kind of subtle flavour in there. But yeah, in the centre of your palate, you can feel there's a nice sort of oily circle as well. So that's where you get that sweet caramelly note in this one. I really wouldn't be surprised if this beer did have a little touch of caramel in it. That would make absolute sense. But yeah, you can definitely feel there's a nice bit of caramel in there, but you can feel the sort of brown sugary, the sort of adjuncty sugar just kind of sitting on top of that. And as you move further out towards the edge of your as you move further out towards the edge of the middle third of your palate, that's when you get all of the that's when you get all of those kind of more biscuity McVitie's digestive elements coming out of the beer too. But I think, pardon me, I think that covers the kind of middle third of the palate quite well, quite succinctly, I should say. But yeah, let's look at the back third of the palate then. So yeah, if you go to that, if you go to the border region between middle third and back third of your palate, you can feel the kind of doughiness kind of building up again in there, which is just quite nice. There is a wee touch of a kind of bread crusty element, like a bit of a grainy element to it too. But on the back third of your palate, it does, you get that kind of doughy yeasty sort of thing again, but you can really feel it's sort of the back third of your palate feels a little bit more sort of airy, and the flavour just feels a little bit taller. So when you start on the back third of your palate, the flavour feels like this, but it gradually condenses down. So it just gradually condenses down like this, and as you reach that border with the middle third of your palate, it goes down like that, and then the middle third of your tongue is definitely a little bit more sort of just condensed together, which I can really appreciate. So yeah, I certainly like how this beer goes about its business, definitely. So yeah, interesting in that sense. But yeah, the malty and yeasty side of this beer, as well as the adjuncty side of things, is very nicely executed, and that's what we want from this beer. That's what we want from these beers. Hoppy side of things, I can see as well, this is kind of what you'd expect. In the back corners of the palate, there is a little bit of that kind of smooth earthiness in there. It makes me wonder about German hops, actually. But as you move further forward, it develops a little bit of a herbal quality, but as you reach the kind of front corners of the palate, it's got a nice kind of quite bright floral aromaticity. It's almost a touch spicy, and that makes me wonder if it's Czech Sats that's in here, because Czech Sats is the one that's going to give you a little bit more spice. The Slovenian hops are very kind of smooth in a sense, whereas the German ones are very bright. So it could be a combination of the Czech and German hops in this, but then Slovenian is kind of like in some ways it's like a combination of the two. In fairness, so yeah, I think it's something like Styrian Goldings, you know, Czech Sats, Jatets as they call it, the German Hallertau or the Tittnanger. I think it's something like that that's in here. It's one of the lower alpha acid hops for sure. But round the front curve of the palate, you've got a nice little bit of grassiness in there, and there's just a wee touch of zestiness to that grassy quality too. But let's focus on the fruity side of the beer then. But yeah, on that front third of your palate, so front third of your tongue, on that border region again, you get a bit of the doughy, the border region between front and middle third of your tongue, you get a bit of doughy build up again and again, a little bit of a kind of bread crusty amount, but the base of that front third of your tongue for sure is a bit of that kind of doughy, yeasty, banana bready sort of thing, although I would say it is a little bit more of a sweeter banana you get in the base there. But yeah, as I always say, that little oily bubble on the front third of your tongue, that's where the juicy fruity esters roll their way out of the hops. So if you go towards the back of that front third of your palate, there's definitely a little bit of an apricot-y note to it. You're getting a little bit of a banana-y element too. But as you move further forward, you start to get a little bit more of a kind of peary and apple-y ester out of this one. I find that as you reach the kind of very front tip of the tongue, it becomes a little bit more kind of almost like a spicy apple in a sense, which is kind of interesting. So yeah, I like that, but you get a wee bit of a citrusy zestiness on the grassy tip of your tongue too. So yeah, I certainly like how this beer goes about its business. It gets a big thumbs up from me. So yeah, as we say, the fruity side of this beer I think is very nice as well. But overall, everything about this beer is very nicely executed. So I certainly wouldn't hesitate to drink this one again for sure, absolutely. So yeah, well done to Vreta Kloster again, a solid example of the triple style. But let's round off the review with the mouthfeel then. So as I said earlier, these Scandinavian examples always just seem a little bit cleaner. And this one has a wee bit of oiliness to it as well, which I like. But yeah, in terms of the mouthfeel then, I'd say that this one is kind of bottom end of full bodied. Carbonation does have a little bit of a prickle to it. You're always going to get that because of the secondary fermentation. And overall, I would say that this is a slightly more oily triple, and I think part of that comes from, you know, the Scandinavian cleanliness, if we can call it that. In terms of hoppy bitterness, I think you're talking maybe about 15 or 20 IBUs with this one. Potentially a little bit more, I think 25 at a push. It doesn't feel madly bitter, of course, but maybe, yeah, 25 IBUs at the absolute maximum, although I think it's most likely to be about 20. But a little bit more bitter than some of the other triples we've had as well. But the yeasty base, as I say, the malty, the kind of middle of your palate, lovely smoothness in there. It's got a little bit of a banana sweetness to it, and then you get the kind of malty elements in there too. The malt helps give the beer just a little bit more oiliness. Then you've got a lovely kind of fruity element to it as well, with a wee touch of zestiness. But overall, this is a very solid triple, and like I said, like I've repeated, I certainly wouldn't hesitate to drink it again. So yeah, I think we can leave it at that for this review. This one was the Vreta Kloster Triple, 9.2% ABV from the Vreta Kloster Nanobryggeri in Ljungsbro, near Linköping here in Sweden. Really enjoyed this one. I'm going to sip on the rest of it and get on with a little bit of work. So yeah, thank you again for watching. Check out my social media. Let me know your own thoughts on this beer in the comment section below. Let me know what your favourite beers are from Vreta Kloster Nanobryggeri as well. Do let me know of any other good triples you know in Sweden. I don't think I've ever had a Norwegian triple, come to think of it. Let me know if there are some kind of Belgian Abbey style beers over in Norway or in Denmark as well. Actually, I don't think I've had Norwegian and Danish brewed examples of this style, but I do have some Finnish ones that I'm going to take a look at for sure. But yeah, let's leave it at that for this one. Once again, thank you for watching my reviews. Check out my social media, check out Vreta Kloster Nanobryggeri, comment in the section below, let me know your own thoughts on this and the brewery, and I will catch you guys in the next review. Slange, skull, cheers, see you guys very soon.